Ravi was a man who loved peace more than comfort. He liked to spend time alone in the open air, walking through forests and sleeping under the sky. He worked in the city for many years, but noise and crowds made him tired. Every weekend he went hiking to breathe clean air and listen to birds. Over time, he started to dream of living close to nature. He wanted to find a quiet place where he could build something with his own hands and stay away from busy life. One summer morning, Ravi packed his bag with food, tools, and a tent. He decided to explore a deep forest that he had only seen on maps. It was far from towns and known for tall pine trees, clear rivers, and wild deer. The local people said the forest was endless, with places where no one had walked for years. That made Ravi even more curious. He wanted to see what was hidden there. He took a bus to the last small village near the forest. After that, there were no roads, only paths made by animals and old trails used by woodcutters long ago. Ravi started his hike early in the morning. The forest was calm and green. Sunlight passed through leaves, making bright spots on the ground. He walked for hours, listening to the sound of birds and the gentle rush of water somewhere nearby. As the day went on, Ravi found himself deep inside the forest. He crossed small streams, climbed over fallen trees, and followed narrow paths. The air smelled fresh and clean. When evening came, he built his tent near a big oak tree and made a small fire. He cooked rice and beans in a pot and ate quietly while looking at the stars. The night sky was clear and wide. He felt peaceful and free. The next morning, Ravi started walking again. He wanted to go further and see if he could find a place to stay for a few days. Around noon, he saw something strange ahead. It looked like a wall or maybe an old fence. He walked closer and found a narrow path covered with grass. It looked like no one had walked there in many years. The path curved through thick trees and went down a small hill. He followed it with care, moving branches away with his hands. At the end of the path, he stopped in surprise. In front of him stood an old wooden cabin. It was hidden between tall pines, half covered with vines and moss. The roof had holes. The door was hanging loose, and the walls were gray from rain and time. But even in that broken state, the cabin looked peaceful, as if it had been waiting for someone. Ravi stood there for a long time, just watching it. The place felt quiet but not empty. Birds sang nearby and the wind moved the leaves gently. He took a few steps closer and saw that the windows were dusty but still in place. The ground around the cabin was covered with dry leaves. There was a small clearing with space for a fire and a few stones arranged like an old sitting area. Ravi pushed the door open. It made a long creaking sound. Inside, dust filled the air. Broken furniture lay on the floor, and the smell of old wood filled the room. A chair stood in the corner, half covered with cobwebs. There was a small fireplace with ashes long gone cold. A shelf leaned against the wall with a few glass jars still sitting on it. He could imagine the person who had once lived there, maybe a hunter or a woodworker. He walked slowly through each part of the cabin. The floor was weak but still held his weight. The roof leaked sunlight through the cracks. It was broken but not destroyed. With care and work, it could be fixed. Ravi felt something warm inside him. He had found what he did not even know he was looking for. This cabin could be his project. He stepped outside again and looked around the clearing. The forest was calm and full of life. A squirrel ran up a tree. The sound of water came from somewhere nearby, maybe a small stream. He thought about his tools and supplies. If he stayed here, he could clean the place, repair the roof, and make it livable again. The idea filled him with energy. Ravi decided to stay. He set up his tent near the cabin and began cleaning the area. He picked up broken wood and cleared fallen branches. The air was cool and the sunlight kept changing as clouds moved above the trees. By evening, he had cleaned the space enough to walk freely around the cabin. He lit a small campfire and cooked his dinner. While eating, he looked at the cabin again. Its wooden walls glowed softly in the firelight. It looked lonely but not forgotten. He wondered who had built it and why they had left. The place had a story that the forest had kept safe. Ravi felt lucky to have found it. He thought about the people who might have lived there many years ago, listening to rain on the roof and wind outside. After finishing his meal, he walked around the cabin once more. He touched the old wood with his hand. It felt rough but strong. He could see marks of tools, showing that someone had worked with care. He smiled to himself and whispered that he would bring this place back to life. That night, he did not sleep inside the cabin because the roof was too weak. He slept in his tent beside the fire. The forest was dark but friendly. He could hear crickets and the rustling of small animals. The fire made him feel safe. Before sleeping, he looked up at the stars and made a quiet promise. He would rebuild the cabin. He would stay here for 120 days and make it a home again. When the morning came, golden light touched the trees and fell on the cabin walls. Birds were singing. Ravi woke up early and stretched his arms. The fresh smell of morning filled the air. He felt excited and ready. Today he would start his work. He would first check the roof, then the walls, then the floor. He would gather wood, stones, and tools from the forest. It would be hard, but he was not afraid of hard work. He went to the stream nearby and washed his face in cold water. He filled his bottle and returned to the cabin. The sun had fully risen, lighting the clearing. He stood there and watched the cabin once more. In his eyes, it already looked different. It was no longer just a broken shelter. It was a dream waiting to be rebuilt. He took his hammer, measured the broken parts, and started planning his steps. The forest was silent, as if watching him. A new chapter of his life was beginning. Ravi did not know what the next 120 days would bring, but he felt ready for all of it. The sound of the first nail hitting wood echoed softly through the forest. The project had begun, and the cabin had found its builder once again. When the morning sun rose higher in the sky, Ravi stood in front of the cabin with a calm but determined face. He had already made his plan for the day. He wanted to check every part of the cabin before starting any repair. He knew that a careless mistake could make the cabin unsafe. The forest was peaceful around him, and the air carried a smell of pine and fresh soil. It was the perfect place to begin a new life. Ravi first examined the roof. He climbed on top using a wooden ladder that he had made the night before from fallen branches. The roof was weak in many places, with broken boards and open gaps where rain could easily enter. Some pieces of wood were covered in green moss, while others had become soft from water. He touched the boards and nodded slowly. It was repairable if he worked carefully. He climbed down and took a notebook from his bag. He began writing a list of everything he needed. He wrote wood planks, nails, rope, and a few strong branches that could be used as beams. He would have to find these things in the forest and nearby areas. There was no store here, only nature. That was both a challenge and a lesson. He smiled slightly because he loved challenges like this. After finishing his list, Ravi picked up his axe and went into the forest. The sound of birds followed him. The sunlight passed through leaves and made bright shapes on the ground. He walked until he found a group of tall pine trees. Near them lay several fallen trunks, strong but dry. These were perfect for making new planks. He started cutting them into smaller parts, his hands moving with rhythm and focus. Each strike of the axe made a sharp sound that echoed through the trees. By noon, he had gathered enough wood for the first part of the roof. He carried the logs back to the cabin, sweating but satisfied. He placed them near the wall and sat down to rest. The wind was soft and the forest looked alive around him. He felt proud because every step he took brought him closer to his goal. Ravi spent the rest of the day cleaning the inside of the cabin. He swept away dust and removed broken boards. He found old metal tools under the floor, rusty but still strong. There was also an old pot and a knife that looked like they had been used many years ago. He cleaned them and kept them on the shelf. It made him feel connected to the unknown person who had lived there before. As the sun began to set, he looked around and felt happy with the progress he had made. The cabin looked a little brighter. The smell of dust was fading, replaced by the scent of fresh wood. He made a fire outside, cooked some soup, and ate quietly while watching the flames dance. He thought about how much work was still left but did not feel afraid. Hard work gave him purpose. That night, the forest was quiet except for the gentle sound of crickets. Ravi lay inside his tent and looked at the dark outline of the cabin. He could already imagine it repaired, with smoke rising from its chimney and light glowing from the windows. He fell asleep with that picture in his mind. The next morning, he woke up before sunrise. The forest was still, and the air was cool. He stretched his arms, drank some water, and started working again. His first task was to fix the roof. He cut the new planks and shaped them with his knife so that they would fit tightly together. He worked slowly and carefully. Every piece had to be strong. By midday, the roof was half repaired. The new wood looked golden in the sunlight. Ravi stopped for a short rest and ate bread with dried fruit. He looked around and smiled. The place was already starting to change. The cabin no longer looked forgotten. It looked alive again. After his break, Ravi began to work on the windows. The old frames were broken and glass was missing from most of them. He decided to make wooden shutters instead. That would protect the cabin from rain and wind. He used thin boards and tied them with rope, creating simple but strong shutters. When he attached them, the cabin looked neat and clean. While working, Ravi noticed a small stream behind the trees. He walked there and saw clear water flowing over smooth stones. It was perfect for drinking and cleaning. He filled his bottle and washed his face. He also thought that one day he could make a small water channel to bring the water closer to the cabin. That would make life easier during long stays. For the next several days, Ravi worked from sunrise to sunset. He repaired the roof completely, fixed the windows, and built a small wooden door. He replaced old boards on the floor and filled cracks in the walls with mud and dry grass to keep out the wind. His hands were full of scratches, but his spirit stayed strong. He spoke to the forest sometimes, thanking it for its help. On the 10th day, rain started to fall. It was his first test. He quickly moved his things inside and sat near the fireplace. He had repaired the chimney a few days earlier, and now it worked well. Smoke rose up and out through the top while the warm air filled the cabin. He smiled because the roof did not leak anymore. The rain kept falling for hours, but Ravi stayed dry. That small success filled him with pride. When the rain stopped, the forest looked clean and fresh. Small drops hung on leaves, and the air smelled of earth. Ravi stepped outside and looked at the cabin. It looked strong now, standing like a friend who had come back to life. He walked around it and saw how well it had held against the rain. It gave him hope for the next steps. The next task was to make furniture. He wanted a bed, a table, and a few shelves. He used the extra wood and built a simple bed frame. He placed soft grass and cloth on top to make it comfortable. Then he made a table from a thick piece of wood and 4 short logs. It was not perfect, but it was useful. Every evening he would sit at that table, eat his meal, and write notes about the day. He wrote about what he had repaired, what tools he needed, and what he planned next. The notebook became his guide. It helped him stay organized and focused. One afternoon, while collecting stones near the stream, he found a few animal tracks. They were small and fresh. He followed them quietly and soon saw a deer drinking water. The animal looked at him for a moment but did not run away. Ravi smiled and watched it for a while before returning to work. He felt that the forest had started to trust him. By the end of the second week, the cabin looked almost new. The roof was solid, the door worked smoothly, and the floor was clean. The fireplace burned bright in the evenings, and the place felt warm. Ravi often stood outside at night and watched the stars. He had no phone, no noise, no rush, only peace. He counted the days in his notebook. It had been 14 days since he started. He still had many more to go, but he had built a strong start. His body was tired, but his heart was full of energy. Before sleeping, he looked around the quiet forest and whispered a simple promise. He would finish what he started. He would not leave the cabin until it was perfect. The forest listened in silence, and the wind moved softly through the trees. The journey of rebuilding had only begun, but Ravi already knew he was changing along with the cabin. The night was wild and full of thunder. The heavy rain fell like a curtain across the dark roads. Mr. Armand drove through the storm, his hands tight on the steering wheel, his eyes filled with worry. Every few seconds, lightning lit up the road ahead, showing the wet trees and the sharp turns. He did not care about the danger. All he wanted was to find Mira. He remembered the guard's words clearly. Her necklace had been found near the old bridge. That place was far from the mansion and close to the river. It was not safe during the storm. The road leading there was narrow, and the bridge was old and weak. His heart beat fast as he reached the area. The car's lights shone on the broken path, and he stopped near the edge of the bridge. He stepped out of the car holding a small torch. The wind blew hard, making his coat flap in the air. "Mira!" he called out, his voice echoing through the rain. There was no answer, only the sound of water rushing below. He moved closer, shining the light on the muddy path. Then he saw footprints, small and light, leading to the middle of the bridge. He followed them slowly. The wooden boards creaked under his feet. The river below roared loudly, filled with strong waves. He kept calling her name, his voice breaking with fear. Finally, he saw a shadow at the other end of the bridge. It was Mira, sitting on the wet floor, her knees pulled close to her chest. She was soaked from head to toe. Her hair stuck to her face and her hands trembled from the cold. When she saw him, her eyes widened with surprise. "Sir," she said softly, her voice shaking. He rushed to her and helped her stand. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice full of concern. "It is dangerous. You could have fallen." She looked down. "I am sorry, sir. I did not mean to worry anyone. I came here to think. This place reminds me of my childhood. I used to come near rivers like this when I lived at the orphanage. It makes me remember things I cannot forget." He placed his jacket over her shoulders. "You could have remembered them safely inside the house," he said gently. "I know," she replied, her voice low. "But something feels strange lately. When you looked at that photo when I said Ian's name, it felt like you knew something I did not. I felt like you were hiding something from me." Mr. Armin looked into her eyes. Rain ran down his face, mixing with the water in his hair. For a long time he said nothing. Then he sighed deeply. "You are right, Mira, I am hiding something. But I did not know how to tell you." "What is it, sir?" she asked softly. He looked toward the river. His voice came out quiet but clear. "I knew that boy, Ayan. In fact, I was that boy." Mira stared at him in shock. She could not believe what she had just heard. "You were Ayan?" she whispered. He nodded slowly. "Yes, my real name was Ayan before I was adopted. My parents changed my name to Armin when I started a new life with them. I thought I could forget the past, but I never did. I remember everything, the orphanage, the games, the laughter, and you." Tears filled Mira's eyes. She took a step closer. "All these years I thought you forgot me. You promised to come back, but you never did." His voice broke a little. "I wanted to, Mira, I really did. But life changed after adoption. My new family moved abroad. I was young and had no way to contact anyone from the orphanage. When I grew older, I searched for it, but it had already closed. I thought everyone had moved away. I never imagined I would see you again." The rain slowly started to calm down. The clouds thinned and the sound of thunder became faint. The two of them stood under the gray sky, both lost in the memories of their past. Mira looked at him with mixed emotions. "You changed so much. I did not recognize you," he smiled faintly. "And you changed too. But when you said Ayan's name, it was like time stopped for me. I saw the same girl who once shared her food with me when I was hungry, who laughed even when everything around us was sad." Her eyes softened. "I missed you, Ayan." He felt a warmth in his chest when she said his old name. "I missed you too, Mira." For a moment, silence filled the air. Then he said, "Let us go back home." "You need to rest." She nodded, and they walked together back to the car. The road back to the mansion was calmer now. The rain had stopped, and the sky was clearing. As they drove, Mira looked out the window, thinking about how strange life was. The man she worked for was the same boy she had once shared her childhood with. When they reached the mansion, Ronnie came running to the door. Her face was full of worry. "Where have you two been?" "I was so scared," she cried. Mira hugged her mother tightly. "I am fine, Ma. Sir found me." Ronnie looked at Mr. Armin with tears of relief. "Thank you, sir." "You saved her." He shook his head. "No, I just found what I had already lost once." Ronnie looked puzzled, but he did not explain. He simply asked Mira to rest and then went to his study. He sat at his desk, staring at the photograph of the two children again. This time he smiled. He finally knew that the promise he had once broken could now be mended. Later that evening, he called Ronnie to his office. She came in nervously, wondering if she or her daughter had done something wrong. "Please sit," he said politely. "There is something I want to tell you." She sat down carefully. "Years ago," he began, "I lived in the same orphanage where Mira did. My name was Ayan then. She was my best friend. I did not know you were the woman who took her in. I owe you my thanks. You raised her well." Ronnie looked shocked. "You were that boy she always talked about?" "The one she missed?" he nodded. "Yes, and I'm grateful to you. You gave her a family when I could not." Tears filled Ronnie's eyes. "Sir, I did nothing great." Mira was always special. She deserved a better life. He smiled kindly. Now she will have one. I will make sure of it. Ronnie looked uncertain. What do you mean, sir? He stood up and walked to the window. I want to help her study further. She has dreams, I can tell. I want to give her the chance she never had at the orphanage. That is the least I can do for the friend I once left behind. Ronnie's voice shook a little. You are very kind, sir. She will be thankful. The next morning, Mira woke up feeling tired but calm. She stepped out into the garden and saw Mr. Armin already there, standing near the oak tree. The air smelled fresh after the rain. She walked up to him quietly. You did not sleep? She asked. He smiled. Not much. I was thinking about how small the world is. After all these years, fate still brought us together. She looked at him and said, Maybe it was meant to happen. He nodded. Maybe it was. Then he said something that surprised her. Mira, I want to help you fulfill your dreams. Whatever you wish to do, I will support it. She shook her head. You have already done too much, sir. No, he said firmly. I owe it to you. You once shared your food with me when I had nothing. Let me share what I have now. Her eyes filled with emotion, but she smiled softly. Thank you, Ayan, he smiled back. Only you can still call me that. They stood quietly under the morning sun, both feeling that life had given them a second chance. Neither of them knew that new challenges were waiting, and one secret about the past was still hidden, a secret that could change everything once more. Days passed after the storm, and the mansion became peaceful again. The sky was clear, the garden bloomed with bright flowers, and the soft wind brought a calm feeling. Mira returned to her daily work, but now everything felt different. She was no longer just a maid's daughter in the mansion. She was part of a story that had started many years ago in the orphanage. Mr. Armin treated her with more kindness than before. He no longer called her girl or assistant, but used her name every time. He often asked about her life, her dreams, and the things she liked. He made sure she and Ronnie had comfortable rooms and good meals. The other workers noticed the change too, but they said nothing. They only whispered that the master must have known her from his past. One morning, as Mira was arranging flowers in a vase, Kabir entered the hall with some files in his hand. He smiled when he saw her. Good morning, Mira, he said. Good morning, sir, she replied politely. Kabir looked around before lowering his voice. I heard about the storm night. You should be careful. The bridge is not safe during rain. I will be, sir, she said. Sir Armin helped me that night. I am thankful to him, Kabir nodded. He seems to care about you a lot. I have never seen him so concerned about anyone. Mira looked away shyly. He has known me since childhood. We were friends in the orphanage. Kabir's eyes widened. Really? That explains everything. Before she could answer, Mr. Armin entered the hall. His calm but strong voice filled the air. Kabir, come to my office. I need you to check a report. Kabir nodded and followed him, but before leaving, he gave Mira a small smile. Inside the office, Mr. Armin looked serious. He opened a drawer and took out a few old documents. Kabir, I want you to find out what happened to the orphanage after it closed. There are things about its last few years that I never knew. Kabir agreed at once. I will handle it, sir. Do you suspect something? Armin looked at the papers. I am not sure, but I want to know if anyone from there kept records about the children. Some names disappeared from the list, and I need to know why. Kabir promised to search and left. Later that day, Ronnie was sitting in the garden sewing some clothes. Mira came and sat beside her. Ma, do you know Sir Armin was Ayan? She asked softly. Ronnie looked up with calm eyes. Yes, he told me. It surprised me at first, but fate works in strange ways. Maybe it was written that you two would meet again. Mira smiled. He is kind, Ma. He said he wants to help me study and follow my dreams, but I don't know if I should accept it. Ronnie placed her hand on her daughter's. There is no harm in accepting help from someone who truly cares. You always wanted to learn more, and now the chance has come. Mira nodded. You are right, Ma. Maybe I will join a training course soon. As they talked, they did not notice that one of the older maids, Leela, was standing near the doorway listening quietly. She was known for gossiping. When she heard that Mira had a special bond with the master, her eyes filled with jealousy. She had worked in the mansion for many years and never received such attention. That evening, she went to another servant and whispered, Do you know that the master treats Ronnie's daughter like someone important? There must be a secret. By the next day, half of the staff in the mansion had heard the rumor. Whispers filled the kitchen and halls. Some said Mira was the master's lost relative. Others said something even stranger. Ronnie noticed the strange looks but chose to stay silent. Meanwhile, Kabir returned with new information. He went straight to Mr. Arman's office, his face tense. "Sir, I found something you need to see," he said, placing a thin file on the table. Arman opened it and read the first few pages. His expression changed slowly from calm to shock. "Are you sure this is true?" he asked. Kabir nodded. "Yes, sir. The orphanage manager's report showed that one of the children listed as missing years ago was Mira. The papers say she was reported lost during a transfer to another shelter, but a woman later claimed her and took her away. That woman's name was Ronnie." Mr. Arman leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. "So Ronnie took Mira after the orphanage closed," he said softly. "She told me she raised her as her daughter, but she never said how she got her." Kabir said, "Sir, it seems Ronnie saved her. Many children were moved to poor shelters when the orphanage lost funding. Maybe Ronnie wanted to protect Mira." Mr. Arman nodded slowly. Yes, that must be it. Still, he felt uneasy. He wanted to hear the full truth from Ronnie herself. That evening, he called Ronnie into his office. She came in nervously, wiping her hands on her apron. "You wanted to see me, sir?" He looked at her kindly. "Please sit, Ronnie. I want to ask something important. You once said you took Mira with you from the orphanage, but the reports I found say she was marked as missing before you claimed her. Can you tell me what really happened?" Ronnie lowered her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a sigh, she began to speak. "Sir, the truth is painful, but I will tell it. The day the orphanage closed, there was great confusion. Some people came to take the children to another place, but the place they mentioned was not safe. I had worked there long enough to know that many children never came back from such transfers. I saw Mira crying that day, calling your name, hoping you would come back. I could not leave her there. I took her with me and left quietly. I feared being punished, so I never told anyone. I gave her my name and raised her as my own." Tears filled her eyes as she looked at him. "If I did wrong, I'm ready to face it. But I could not let her suffer. She was like my own child." Mr. Arman stood up slowly. His eyes were soft with emotion. "You did nothing wrong, Ronnie. You saved her life." "I owe you for that." Ronnie shook her head. "I did what any mother would do," he smiled. "You are a good mother. I will never forget what you did for her." At that moment, Mira appeared at the door. She had heard everything. Her eyes were full of tears as she rushed forward and hugged her mother tightly. "Ma, you saved me." "I never knew," she said, her voice trembling. Ronnie hugged her back. "You do not need to thank me. You are my daughter in every way that matters." Mr. Arman watched them quietly, feeling his heart grow heavy with respect. He realized that both women had carried pain for years but still stayed strong. Later that night, he walked alone in the garden, thinking deeply. The moonlight covered the flowers and the fountain water sparkled under the stars. He finally felt peace in his heart, but as he stood there, Kabir came running toward him. "Sir, there is something else," Kabir said quickly. "I found a letter from the old orphanage manager in the file. It says someone had sponsored your adoption many years ago. The name was hidden before, but now I found it. The person who paid for your adoption was the same man who owned the land where the orphanage stood." Mr. Arman frowned. "Who was it?" Kabir hesitated. "It was your father." Arman froze. "That is not possible. My parents told me I was chosen by chance." Kabir nodded slowly. "It seems they were told that story. But the letter says your real father was alive then. He had given money to ensure you were adopted into a good family. He wanted you to have a better life, but he could never claim you because of his condition. The letter ends with a line saying he watched you leave from afar." Mr. Arman felt a strange mix of shock and sadness. All his life he had believed he was an orphan with no family. Yet now he learned that someone had cared for him all along. He walked back toward the mansion, his mind full of questions. Mira saw him from the window and noticed how pale his face looked. She hurried outside. "Sir, are you all right?" He looked at her, still lost in thought. "Everything I believed about my life was not true, Mira. I was never alone. But I never knew it." She touched his arm gently. "Sometimes the truth comes late, but it still brings peace." He smiled weakly. "Maybe this truth will finally bring me peace too." The night grew calm, but in Mr. Arman's heart, a new mystery had begun. One that would lead him to a part of his past he had never imagined. The morning light entered through the tall glass windows of the mansion. The air was calm, but inside the billionaire's house everyone felt the storm that was about to come. Rohan stood near the window, his mind full of questions. Beside him, Mira looked worried. She did not know how this story would end, but she hoped it would bring peace for both of them. Mr. Aditya sat in the main hall, his face pale as if he had not slept all night. Papers were scattered on the table. One of them was an old record from the orphanage, the other was a photograph of two small children standing close to each other. The picture showed a small boy with a shy smile and a girl holding his hand. That boy was Rohan and the girl was Mira. Aditya's assistant, Ravi, entered quietly. He looked at his boss and said in a soft voice, "Sir, the report from the orphanage has arrived. It confirms everything." Aditya nodded slowly. His hands trembled as he took the paper. He looked at the names and felt his throat tighten. "So it is true," he whispered. "Rohan is not just an orphan I helped. He is my son." Ravi looked shocked. "Your son, sir?" "Yes," Aditya said in a weak voice. "Many years ago, when I was still struggling, my wife and I had a son. But during a storm, there was an accident and he was lost. The orphanage had taken him in, but by the time I found them, they had said no such child was there. I thought he was gone forever." Ravi did not know what to say. He stepped back quietly as Rohan and Mira entered the room. Rohan looked at the man who had been both his employer and a mystery. His voice was calm but firm. "Sir, you wanted to speak with us?" Aditya stood up. He looked into Rohan's eyes and felt the same warmth he once saw in his wife's eyes. He could barely hold his tears. "Yes, Rohan," he said. "I have something to tell you. Something I should have known long ago." Mira felt the tension in the air. She held her mother's bracelet in her hand, the one Rohan had given her long ago. It was a piece of their shared past, but now it seemed connected to a larger story. Aditya took a deep breath. "You are my son," he said. "You lived in that orphanage because of my failure to find you. I looked everywhere, but fate kept us apart." Rohan froze. His mind went blank for a moment. He had always wondered why Aditya had shown him so much care and interest, but he never imagined this. "Your son?" he said slowly. Aditya nodded. "I did not know until today. I got the confirmation only now. I wanted to be sure before I told you." Mira stepped closer to Rohan, her eyes full of surprise and happiness for him. "Rohan, this means you are not alone anymore. You have a family." But Rohan looked confused. His life had always been simple and full of struggles. The thought of being the son of a billionaire felt too heavy. "Why now?" he asked quietly. "Why after all these years?" Aditya walked closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Because truth takes time. I could not find you before, but now I will not let you go again. I want you to live here, to take your place in this house." Rohan stepped back. "Sir, I have lived as an orphan all my life. I worked hard for everything I have. You can't just change everything overnight. I am thankful, but I am not sure who I am anymore." Aditya's face showed pain. "You are my son, Rohan. That will never change." Mira watched the two, feeling the weight of their emotions. She remembered the orphanage, the cold nights, and the way Rohan always protected her. Now he was standing in front of a father he never knew. It was both a miracle and a storm. After a long silence, Rohan said, "I need time. I cannot accept this without thinking." Aditya nodded slowly. "Take all the time you need. The door of this house will always be open for you." Mira placed her hand on Rohan's arm and said softly, "Whatever you choose, I'll be with you." Later that evening, Rohan and Mira went back to the small house near the garden where Mira and her mother lived. The air was cool, and the stars began to appear. Rohan sat on the porch looking at the sky. Mira brought him a cup of tea and sat beside him. "Everything changed today," she said quietly. "Yes," he replied. "I don't know how to feel. I spent my whole life wondering why I was alone, and now I find out I was never really alone." Mira smiled gently. "Maybe life wanted to test you first. You had to become strong before the truth came." Rohan looked at her. "And what about you, Mira? What will you do now?" She looked down for a moment. "My mother always said kindness creates miracles. Maybe this was her last gift. She wanted you to know your truth." Rohan nodded. "Your mother gave me more than anyone else ever did. She gave me hope when I had nothing." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the soft wind. The next morning, Aditya visited them. He looked tired but peaceful. "Rohan," he said, "I am not here to force you. I only want to make things right. If you choose to stay where you are, I will respect that, but I hope you will let me be part of your life. Rohan looked at him and saw not a billionaire but a man full of regret and hope. I don't know if I can live in your world, he said. But I can try to know you. Aditya smiled faintly. That is all I ask. Over the next few weeks, things began to change. Rohan continued his work in the mansion, but now as Aditya's acknowledged son. Mira helped him adjust to the new life, reminding him of where he came from and the people who loved him. Aditya made sure Mira and her mother's memory were always respected. He set up a small scholarship in her name for children from the orphanage, so that no child would suffer the way they did. Months later, Rohan stood in front of the orphanage building. He looked at the children playing in the yard and smiled. Mira stood beside him holding a basket of gifts. Do you think they will remember us? She asked with a smile. They don't need to, Rohan said softly, but I will never forget them. They walked together into the orphanage hand in hand, ready to share kindness with those who needed it most. And far behind them, Aditya watched from his car, tears in his eyes, proud of the son he had finally found. The pain of the past had brought them together, and now they were ready to build a new story, one of forgiveness, hope, and family.